It is 7 o'clock. We will convene the November 16th, 2011 meeting of the Airport Commission. We'll start by taking a roll.
Kirk Martin.
Here.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
John Clark.
Here.
Chris Colbert.
Here.
William Gilbert.
Here.
Patricia Griffin. Scott Tracy.
Here.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
As far as public comment, any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled before them today. Total time for the comment is 15 minutes. Are there any speaker slips?
I don't have any, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Notices, on Thursday, November 10th, 2011 at 5:30 p.m., the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Airport Administration Office. Minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion?
Move we accept them.
Motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain. Motion carried. Consent calendar. This evening, we have lease agreement items on the consent calendar, and three in particular. Is there a motion concerning the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent calendar.
Seconded.
All those in favor of accepting the consent calendar signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Consent calendar is accepted. We have Mr. Aceves with us this evening for a liaison report from the City of Goleta. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My apologies for missing a couple of meetings. The first meeting when I missed, I actually went to San Francisco on a conference and used the airport. Right. So I will give you testimonial that it was outstanding. To be able to come in and have a cup of coffee and some breakfast and relax. Plane was on time. Couldn't have been better. So
You are under
you
oath.
guys have a great evening. What's that?
You are under oath.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a couple things to report. We've been very busy in Goleta. Some of the things be of interest to your commission and to staff. Last night we initiated the general plan amendment changes for Target. And it's going to be located, if it goes through and get all the approvals, it'll be located at Los Caneros Way and Hollister Avenue. For those of you who aren't familiar with that area, it's where there's an old gas station was there years ago, FedEx building, the Goleta Athletic Club. Target's in the process of acquiring all the properties, and it's going to require relocation of the athletic club and another business on the property. But the airport will be involved, obviously, because it's part of Hollister Avenue is part of your domain. So, stand by. It's going to be a multi-year project, but people are very excited. I was mentioning to some of you earlier that we had a packed room last night. I think there was maybe 3 men in the audience. So the women came out in total support, and it was kind of hard to say no. So it's moving forward. Tomorrow, as a member of the city's representative on SBK, we're going to be hearing the West Star development, which is part of on the airport land use. West Star is that property across the street from Costco, the vacant lot, which actually I was hoping would be a Target location, but that didn't work out. That's going to be a mixed use, some commercial building on the front and about 300 plus apartments in the back. So that's going through the planning stages. And we recently did the groundbreaking for the courtyard of Marriott, which is on Stork Road. Those of you who've gone by, you can see the trucks are moving a lot of dirt. They expect to open that up by July of next year. which is great news for you. You have another location to bring some of your guests in. But it's great news for the city because of the additional revenue that will be coming in with the new hotel. And we also did the groundbreaking for the San Jose Creek, and that'll start construction very soon. Along with that, the next thing after that will be the replacement of the bridge at the War Memorial Bridge over Hollister. That'll be replaced. Planning stages are also, in the planning stage, we're also having 2 roundabouts at that location, and then also be a roundabout over here at Equifowler. So a lot of things happening in the city. I'm glad to actually have something to report tonight. But unless you have any questions, that's my report.
The Marriott, is that right behind the ice skating rink?
That's right behind the fire station.
Right.
Ice skating rink, fire station,
Okay.
and then the
Good.
Marriott.
Thank you.
The second roundabout location was where again?
Right out here at Equifowler.
Oh, Equil and Fowler?
Yeah.
It's going to go through. It's great. And about how large of a parcel, once it's assembled, is the target location proposed?
The target is going to take up the entire area from Hollister Avenue to actually Los Caneros Way, which abuts the Tobes project.
Right.
It's about 4 parcels that will be acquired. Target will be a 2-story building. It'll be
Really?
a podium. The bottom floor will be about 500 parking spots. And then you'll have the elevators and escalators going up to the second floor, which is about 165,000 square feet of store.
Wow.
So
And they'll have the escalators that take your cart.
they'll have the escalators take your card out. See, she knows. She knows.
They are fun to watch.
Yeah, they are.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add to council members' comments, we met with City of Goleta staff, the city manager, and his planning and public works staff today, just our kind of annual catch-up. And they are indeed very, very busy. Got a lot of projects going on and a lot of opportunities for both the airport and the city to work together and on various projects. So it was great.
That's exciting.
And I don't believe we have Councilmember Frank Hotchkiss here
Not
this
this
evening,
evening.
so there will be no liaison report from Santa Barbara, which moves us to the administrative reports.
Okay. Well, this evening, I wanted to make a presentation or briefing on the city's policies and procedures for the naming of public buildings. With the new airline terminal completed, we've received 2 recommendations from community members on and recommendations and requests to name the new terminal building after 2 separate individuals. So I thought this evening we could go through what the procedures are and requirements that the city's municipal code sets forth. And then I would like you to direct staff to hold a public hearing, which is in essence every commission meeting is a public hearing. After the first of the year, when we can get all 7 of you together to actually hear it and then make a recommendation to City Council on the need or desirability of naming the terminal building. So tonight, we're not going to get into any discussion on the pros and cons of that, but rather go through talk about what the process is. And if there's any additional information you would like me to gather in the meantime before the hearing, I'd like to hear that as well. Anything that would help you make a decision or make it easier for you during the hearing. So, in 1971, the city adopted an ordinance that established the purpose of and procedures and policies for naming of public facilities, not only public buildings but streets. And I put in your packet an excerpt from the municipal code that speaks to the naming of buildings, since that's what we're speaking of. And they put together this policy because before that time, there were no guidelines, and I think I'm not sure what precipitated it in 1971, but I'm sure that something happened where either a building was named or a street was named, and there was probably some controversy that they felt that they needed some guidance, or to set up some guidance. So the election of names for public facilities should follow the following principles and policies. As a general policy, the names which commemorate the culture and history of Santa Barbara would be given the first priority, and names commemorating the California history a second priority. The name of the individual should be one that has particularly meritorious and outstanding contribution over a period of years to the general public interest or to the interests of the city. Preference given to names of a long established local usage, names which are I could say this before, euphonious, which I looked up, and have a good sound to them, and names which lend dignity to the facility. Names which are of endearing, honorable fame, not notoriety, and commensurate with the significance of the facility. Proliferation of names for different parts of the facility should be avoided. And also connotations that were in the contemporary setting are now either derogatory or offensive should not be considered. Change of names, existing buildings which are named, once established, the name should not be changed unless there is some inappropriate meaning to that name or inappropriateness at that point. In the selection of names for city-owned facilities, the suggestions, comments, recommendations of community or citizen groups and citizens in the neighborhood around the facility should be considered, provided that they are consistent with the policy set forth in the municipal code. Any person may initiate the naming of a city-owned facility by submitting the name to the city administrator, which both the parties did that started this whole process. And they are to give a statement of why they think that the person that they are recommending qualifies with not only the ordinance, but their little bit of the history of why they would be a good candidate. The city administrator refers, once they review the request, they refer it to the department, and the city administrator, Jim Armstrong, has referred it to me, and that's why it's on the agenda this evening. The commissioner committee, which in this case is yourselves, will hold a public hearing to consider the necessity or desirability of naming the facility and the proposed name and any alternatives. And then you're to prepare a recommendation for action by the city council. And the recommendation should include or shall include the name, if any, for the facility, which is deemed most appropriate in accordance with the policy and guidelines of this chapter, and the justification for selection of the name. So we will, you will be provided with enough information that you will be able to, make a full recommendation, whatever that might be. So I would like for you to let me know if there's any additional information you would need, and then to direct me to hold a hearing once I can have a meeting where all 7 of you can be there.
First off, could we, for the record, say what the complete, total, and proper name of the airport is now?
The airport or the terminal?
The terminal.
Just Santa Barbara Airport Terminal.
I just wanted to show
okay,
it for the...
and then the former terminal, or the old terminal, was dedicated to Earl Ovington in 1969.
Thank you.
I was curious about the previous terminal. To keep that history, will his name remain with the building when it's moved, relocated?
That's correct. We saved the rock where the plaque that dedicates the terminal to him, and we will, once we relocate the terminal, we'll relocate the dedication plaque as well.
So previous to 1971, I know we have all these streets that are named after World War II veterans. What was the process? I'm assuming they were named prior to 71, so what did they do then?
They were named in, I'm trying to think, it was 1948 or 49. They had veterans groups take names from the community, and this I gathered from reading newspaper articles at the time. And those veterans groups selected the names for the streets because there were obviously more local aviators that died during World War II than there were streets available.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how that process went. I think probably every street or building that was named before, or park before 1971 probably had a different process. I know that many city parks are named for people who donated the park land to the city. So it's been done in many different ways over the years.
Well, this would be an exciting process.
Yes, it'll be interesting.
I have a couple of requests. First, I would appreciate it if you were able to give us some sort of an assessment assuming we proceed with a hearing, of the approximate costs you would consider involved in the entire project. I would imagine there'd be a dedication ceremony, whether or not the airport would bear any of those costs, signage, any other types of administrative activities that need to go on with that, so we have kind of an accounting of what's involved. And then also, I'd have a request, I guess, of the city of Goleta, since the airport is such an integral part of their community. I would certainly hope, assuming we have a hearing, that they might be able to forward a representative to express their interests, concerns, opinions. Right? And presumably there'd be some consultation involved there. Great, thanks.
I got a
And
question.
If you could bring the three men that attended the target meeting, that'd probably be good too.
Is it possibility of naming areas of the terminal rather than the terminal? In other words, some area like the rotunda area for somebody, the main part for somebody, rather than the terminal itself. Personally, I would feel better, it's my own thing, that if the city, if we want to name the thing, let the city do it, since it's city property and it's taking city people. If you want to deal with aviation, then I'm fine, but I don't know what to do with some of these others. The names that were submitted, I asked around, and everybody said, who? In all fairness, I enjoyed reading what was sent, and I understand why, but it's still, if we're going to open it up and so forth. I was just wondering about those two things. One, can we do areas rather than a terminal, and provide for maybe more individuals, plus keep the tower that we're moving as dedicated to the Ovington. And somebody, we really want to do this naming bit, city, I don't know. Anyhow.
I believe in the presentation that you just made, there was a reference to not naming sections of buildings, that it was just in totality.
Let's see here. Yeah, there was a part of
Item
that.
E. Proliferation of names for different parts of the same facility should be avoided.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, a clarification and then a request. Clarification is that for the commission to develop a recommendation, there has to be a finding. That's how I interpret this, a finding of necessity or desirability of opening this process up, considering names. do I see that? So I'm asking for a clarification. Are those, that's really a decision before there's an open naming convention selection? Is that, am I interpreting that correctly?
That's kind of the way I interpret it is, I guess the first question is it necessary to name the terminal?
Mm-hmm.
And is it desirable? I mean, I think those are,
Right. So there
questions.
seems to be a,
and if it is, I mean,
Yeah.
if it is desirable to name the terminal, and then what? I mean,
and then there, okay, so it's really two, paramount is this decision has to be reached first before any names could be considered.
well, and then
And
I guess your recommendation, if it was desirable to name the terminal, do you want to recommend just considering two names?
right, there's a
or
whole process.
open up-
Right.
the process more?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would see this, an outlook for this would be, one, is there a finding to have a named terminal? And if so, then the commission would develop, I guess, a process or procedure to consider names and that
Right,
kind of
but
thing.
taking that step, I think that's what we do at the hearing.
Yeah, right.
Tonight is just,
All right.
And that's something I want, thank you for the comments, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it's laid out fairly clearly in the city charter. It's the procedure.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
And the purpose of a proposed hearing would be to gather all the information and make those determinations.
Right.
correct.
And so, in answer to your comment, if we were to recommend a hearing when the entire commission would be present, it would be to gather the information to make those determinations if there was a necessity, and make that recommendation.
Yeah, you would consider it all at
Exactly.
that point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the wording is consider the necessity or desirability of
Right.
naming, is the way it's worded.
And the proposed name
And,
the
yeah,
alternative.
Right.
yeah.
That could be two separate.
That brings me back to my first question, and how do you see the original terminal fitting in with the new terminal? Because it's already has a name. Is it an annex? Is it a wing? Is it part of the terminal in whole, in which case we can't name it in parts? It's not to jump the gun,
It's
maybe
awkward.
that's what we'll have to talk about.
Yeah,
It is a separate building.
it's a separate building. The way I see it, it's a separate building, but it's still part of the terminal campus. So I just think we have to do the best we can with,
Again, the wording
have.
is different parts of the same facility.
Right.
Doesn't say building. Maybe we should get a reading from the city attorney or something on
Yeah.
that, just so we don't get hung up on it.
I
Well, I
believe
think-
we need all of the information if we are to recommend a hearing, from determinations to be able to consider all parts.
okay, well, we still need to have the hearing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I will get you the information in the meantime, and that'll be part of
That was
throwing
directed
my
to you.
things around.
Hazel,
We
You
saw
all right,
it.
Ava?
Yeah.
If it's appropriate, Karen, I don't know if the city clerk could be of assistance, but it'd be helpful for me to see if there's some archive on what precedents have been set for facilities as opposed to parks, as opposed to street naming conventions. I can't, I've been here 30 years, I can't, has it been that long? Yeah, I guess so. I can't recall any.
Was that rhetorical?
It was a rhetorical question, yeah.
Yeah, there are many more parks, I think, that are named for people than there are public buildings. But I have information from the Parks Department on, and they probably have done the most, I mean, their facilities. So I'll bring to you whatever
Sure.
I find out.
Be helpful. Thank you.
So, at this time, we need to determine if we're going to conduct a hearing. And
Well, you are going to
We're
conduct
gonna
a hearing.
conduct
You
a
just
hearing.
need to tell me to do it.
which is where I was going with
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yes.
I think they're
Let's
looking
have a
for
hearing.
a motion.
Exactly what I was
Let's
going
have
for.
let's have a hearing.
Thank you for your patience.
On the desirability and naming options for the terminal building.
Thank you for that motion.
Motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor of said motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed and abstain. The motion is carried and to be recommended for the January meeting unless the total commission is not able to be
Correct.
present.
Right.
Very
So
good.
we'll pull you in December. We're going to be, the last half of December, we're on furlough. But, so before that, we'll see if you can tell us if you'll be able to make the January meeting so that we can let the other parties know, so
Absolutely.
they can attend.
And is it a requirement for the full commission or simply a quorum of the commission?
No, there's no requirement for not to be the full, but I think it would be better to have the full.
Well, certainly.
I mean, if it went for
It
3
could be
months,
months.
yeah, if it went for 3 months and we couldn't get you all together, we'd just do it. But I prefer to have you all there so that
Sure.
Sure.
I'm sure we all prefer.
Nothing pressing.
we had the final word.
How long was the terminal here before it was named in '69?
It was built in 1942 by United.
Really
So,
a pressure to do it.
you know, I think that the Ovington family had a lot of interest in having it named after, or having some recognition of Earl Ovington.
No, I can understand that part. I just meant going from 40 to 69.
Oh, I think it probably took a while for,
Getting everybody
Yeah,
to meet, yes.
So we're rushing.
Couldn't get them all in the meeting.
We're
Yeah, I
rushing.
know. That was before there were rules.
Actually, just a question out of interest. I recall that the airfield itself has a name also. I
Right,
recall.
and it is, and I've been trying to find, I have seen that document, I just can't find it right now. It's McDermott Field, and it was named by a former airport commissioner. And I don't know what his contributions were that led to that, but I will find that.
So
I'm on a mission.
commission member names are being considered, could be considered. You know what year?
30 years, huh?
He served in the 1960s, so
Probably after the 70s.
Right after this ordinance.
sometime in that era.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm still researching. I'm still looking for it.
I guess another question I would have about the process, certainly the city ordinances outline a mechanism for the public, community or citizen groups to forward those suggestions, comments, recommendations. Do you have an anticipated mechanism for soliciting additional suggestions, or is that going to be part of the pathway, or?
Well, I think that's certainly a recommendation you could make. I mean, one of the recommendations you could make is that there's no necessity or desirability to name the terminal after anybody, or that, you know, there was a desirability to name it and to name it after one of the two individuals that have been recommended, or that there is a desirability to name it, but maybe it should be opened up for other suggestions so that council could consider more than two suggestions. I mean, to me, those seem to be the options. There are probably others, but
Maybe we put it up till the centennial date of the airport.
On the agenda, we move to the subcommittee report of the Ground Transportation Subcommittee. And I believe we are going to be hearing that report from Mr. Lincoln.
and Mr. Martin can chime in.
And Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. We did conduct a meeting of the Ground Transportation Subcommittee, and we presented to the committee the fact that we need to develop a commercial ground transportation program. We have an existing program that currently encompasses just on-demand cabs that wait at the airport and the shuttle. We've had several requests for permits from hotel courtesy vehicles, as well as other shuttles, and many from cab companies. So we discussed the benefits of developing a comprehensive program that will contain permit requirements for all categories of ground transportation providers, that would also revise the existing on-demand taxi cabs and look at a new form of on-demand taxi cabs. We currently have 9 agreements with 9 different operators, and the recommendation was to begin a process to develop a request for proposal along with the ground transportation program development affairs, where we would initially we would seek a single agreement. It's not necessarily a single operator. It could be a consortium of smaller companies that band together as one, like Taxi Cabs Association, which they have out here, or a single company with several cabs that can meet the agreements. So the request for recommendation, when we looked for concurrence on the main elements of the ground transportation program that we recommend to develop, the main elements being the permit requirements for all categories of commercial ground transportation providers, and so specifically I'm referring to hotel and motel courtesy vehicles, shuttle vehicles, limousines, and some couriers that also do a lot of luggage and baggage on contract for airlines that are here every day, all day. In addition to that, the process recommended was to begin with stakeholder meetings of the taxi cab and other transportation providers. So the Ground Transportation Subcommittee concurred with those main elements of the program, developing the RFP for a single agreement and pursuing stakeholder meetings from the taxi cab and other industries so we can get their input to help develop the RFP and help develop the commercial ground transportation program. We want to get operational data so we understand the intensity of use. We want to get input on fees and charges for permits from them so that we can put together a program that has a better opportunity to work for them and us as well. And we will, and we look forward to starting those stakeholder meetings very soon.
Mr. Chair, could I just add
Absolutely.
one thing? And then the subcommittee asked that we come back with whatever the comments were from the stakeholders, and then we would bring it to commission in terms of the program, the policies, and get your input with the benefit of having the input from the stakeholders. So this still has quite a process to go.
Yeah, I would say Mr. Lincoln did a great job of presenting a lot of the factors involved and made a pretty compelling case for kind of the necessity and public convenience of needing an improved program. There are a lot of issues that currently could be addressed and simplified, perhaps the whole operation a little more efficient and effective. The subcommittee's, the request that was made to the subcommittee was simply to recommend that airport staff proceed with the development of the program. It was not an issue as to the program itself, but basically just to ensure that we felt that it was for devoting continued resources to developing that program. I would imagine that we'd be getting a presentation with some of those bullet points just on, what some of the issues. I know there's quite a bit of information just in terms of what are all the issues that the program is intended to address, and there are a considerable number.
Also, I wanted to present the fact that it's going to be very thorough and with great care and caution to making sure that all aspects are going to be served and with a consistent basis from both timing and schedules of late night to cleanliness and attitude towards appearance to dependability of the equipment. So it's extremely thorough and with great care for the utmost of care in the ground transportation for the great public. So that's why we're not making a recommendation at this point. We need to gather more information, but at that point, it's going to be very thorough. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question. Are there efforts being made to, I see the importance of streamlining the contracts so one would apply to any company that would come in instead of having individual, because it makes it easier for the airport. But are there efforts being made to ensure that it's fair for the smaller companies or the individual operators, so they're not singled out or excluded from the market in preference of the larger corporations or cabs?
Yes, and we'll be getting information on ways to do that at the industry stakeholder meetings, but the very first step being done was when I mentioned that in order to avoid just looking at one company with bunches of cabs, the initial plans are to craft the RFPs so that we will also look at proposals from consortiums or associations where it's smaller operators that have banded together to operate as a single unit. And when we get the stakeholder meetings, we'll get more information. We'll bring that back to commission. I mean, commission may, wish to tweak a few things or change a few things. So we'll be back a lot along the way with the subcommittee.
Thank you.
It might be helpful to the commission as a whole to have a presentation really just on the current issues as just an informational item and not a discussion item. I would expect the discussion would initially happen through the work groups and the subcommittee, but just so that everybody has an understanding as the process moves forward, the issues that you're attempting to resolve. I think that's kind of a key element to start with.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think next meeting's January.
The presentation did, I thought, a really good job of laying out what the issues were that you're embarking on trying to resolve with the new program.
We can do that in January. I don't think we have a meeting in December.
Thank you. This moves us to the director's report section of the agenda.
Your favorite part.
Madam Director.
Okay. In terms of passenger count for October, we were up 0.4%. Yay. We are.
I love your enthusiasm.
I am giddy. Year to date, we're down 4%. So as I mentioned in the previous month or two, that we're finally seeing the result of decrease of service that's happened actually months ago. It's finally kind of catching up, but maybe the 0.4%. It's hopeful that we're going to at least flatten out. The other item I wanted to point out was the master plan, and that invitations have been extended to stakeholders to participate on the Planning Advisory Committee. And the first meeting of that committee will be December 7th. And so we're off and running. And I noticed that Carl Hopkins had sent out an email to the Experimental Aircraft Association, of which you're the president, and encouraged their comments, and concerns to be forwarded to him. So I think it's going to be a really fun process. And we spoke with the City of Billy today about their participation on the committee as well. So we're off and running. And Ms. Johns will be the fearless leader. Okay, the terminal project, the deconstruction of the old terminal is complete, and it looks pretty forlorn out there all by itself. The ground improvements for its eventual location have been completed. There have been some issues with the plans as they were drawn and the actual old terminal itself in terms of being consistent have arisen, as you can imagine. So they're sorting those out. The engineers found out that there's a wall that has arches on it that used to be on the outside of the 1942 terminal, but when the additions were added, it was then on the inside. The arches are not in very good shape, but the architectural historian says we need to relocate that intact, so that'll be an interesting move. The Terminal Loop Road, the configuration on the south end of it is completed, so we were very thankful for Thanksgiving weekend holiday that the exit to the airport will be a little bit better than it has been. And they will be working from the south end of the lot, or south end of what will be the short-term lot and roadway toward the north. I mean, that's how construction will progress till they finish the project. The engineer told me today that if there is little rain and or no rain delays, it's possible we could be done with the project in March or April instead of June. So weather is really the determining factor. So we shall see. And it's possible that the 1942 terminal could be relocated before Christmas or the first of the year. But again, we'll have to see how the weather holds out and these little measuring challenges go.
On that, I have a quick question, Madam Director. Would there be any advance notice of when that were going to take place?
Yeah, we'll put the word out. I talked to the superintendent from Emma Construction or Corporation, the contractor, the other day, and I was saying, so when is the terminal going to move? I mean, what night? Well, he goes, no, it's a 5-week process. They take 3 weeks. The mover takes 3 weeks to get all the building shored up and ready to move, and then for some reason it takes 2 weeks to move the building. I'm not sure why it would do that, if they move it inch by inch, or I'm not sure.
Like the space shuttle or something?
I don't know, but so this is not going. I kind of envisioned, we all gather and sit in our lawn chairs
There it
and
goes.
watch it. But that may not be the case.
Well,
I will let you know when I know.
I have my lawn chair ready, so I was just curious.
That's good. Because I think it will be an interesting event to watch.
We'll get Lynn to take pictures there.
Oh, absolutely.
Apparently, it will be a time lapse.
Yeah, we need one of those so we can show, time lapse, so we can show it in 30 seconds.
Yeah. You're right, exactly.
Thank you for that.
So those were the items I was going to point out on the director's report. If there's anything I didn't cover on the report that you'd like me to highlight, I'd be happy to.
I heard recently that the TSA is embarking on some improvements in, I guess you'd call traffic flow through the inspection lanes there, including adding family lanes and some changes in shoe removal requirements. Are you expecting any sort of reconfigurations in security in the terminal?
I hope not. Tracy, if so, Tracy has kept them from me.
I have not heard about any local changes with a implement of a family line or a shoe scanner of any type. The FSD, the Federal Security Director, did say that he hopes that the advanced imaging technology X-ray equipment shows up. He's been told that he can have it, or it may arrive in early 2012, but he's not received confirmation. So until he sees that, he's seen a lot of people get notice and it doesn't pan out. So no promises, but at least they're making the right kind of noises.
And perhaps that equipment arrival would be similar to the moving of the terminal.
An inch at a time, take about 5 weeks?
Yeah. We'll get our lawn chairs once again. Any other questions or comments on the director's report? I, too, wanted to mention that I'd come through the terminal very recently, and with great pride. Everything was working very efficiently, and watching the people coming and going and their satisfaction just gave me great pride. So it's pleasant and fabulous to leave through and to come back to. So.
Great. I did also want to mention the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf on the first floor is now open, and we'll have a little ribbon cutting ceremony on the 28th.
And they just got their new furniture as well.
Yes. So that's good. It seems to be getting a lot of good use.
Is there yet one more motion?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.